Hey there everyone, I'm Ashley Billington and you're watching The Campfire. It's our new Inside High School sports show where we break down districts from around the greater Houston area. This week, we're talking the private school ranks. There are so many good players in the private school ranks. We've got the TAPPS players in SPC. We break that down more in the film session, brought to you by your Geico local offices in Cypress, Katy, Spring, and Pearland. When talking about private school football, it's important to remember there are two separate leagues, TAPPS and SPC. Let's begin with the SPC, the Southwest Preparatory Conference, where last year Episcopal captured the crown with a 42-21 win over Kincaid. Kincaid had beaten Episcopal in the title game the previous two seasons, and the Knights and Falcons are both capable of contending again this season. Don't count out St. John's either, as the Mavericks look to build upon last year's 6-3 campaign. TAPPS is split into 4 divisions. The largest is Division 1, where St. Thomas won the district title and reached the state semifinals last season. The Eagles returned dynamic playmaker Cameron Bonner at wide receiver and should be a force to be reckoned with all season long. St. Thomas rival St. Pius X played for a state title in 2017, but the Panthers struggled to a 2-9 record last fall. We'll see if St. Pius can put together a bounce-back season in 2020. In Division 2, Second Baptist reeled off 12 straight wins last year before eventually falling in the state semifinals. Lutheran South finished second to the Eagles in district play in 2019, and the Pioneers look to take the next step in 2020 behind senior quarterback Luke Harrison. The Woodlands Christian Academy makes the jump to Division 2 after going 12-1 and reaching the state semifinals in Division 3 last year. Among the notable programs in Division 3 and 4 is Cypress Christian. The Warriors won the state title in 2017 but struggled to a 2-8 finish last year. It'll be interesting to see if Cypress Christian can bounce back this fall. Do you have a coach, team, or player doing good in your community? Nominate them for our Chevy Spotlight. To nominate, go to IHSSChevySpotlight.com, and those chosen will be featured as a monthly Chevy Spotlight during the summer. Now we shift our focus specifically to the players, those who are dedicated to helping their team to victory in our segment, Players on the Rise. A defending SPC title champion in 2019, Quan Marion, was a big piece of the puzzle for Episcopal. He ended the state game with 270 yards, getting the Knights over the hurdle of beating Kincaid for the first time in 3 years in the championship. St. Thomas wide receiver Cameron Bonner has made a name for himself in the private school ranks. The Eagles class of 2021 player averages almost 26 yards a reception and is close to 1,300 receiving yards in just 1 year of varsity play. Dylan Bell will be a junior this coming season, but he had a breakout year for Kincaid in his sophomore year. The running back had 83 carries for almost 500 yards and 12 touchdowns for the Falcons. Quarterback Luke Harrison is a double threat on the gridiron and the baseball field. A senior in the class of 2021, Harrison has been a stud for the Pioneers as he has almost 3,800 passing yards and averages 113 passing yards a game. The Warriors running back, Dane Jackson, is a big-time threat on the field for the Woodlands Christian Academy. The soon-to-be senior has almost 3,000 yards and over 300 carries. He also averages almost 140 yards per game for his team. And those players are phenomenal. But to win, you also need phenomenal head coaching. And in this next segment, we have a coach who knows how to win championships. Houston Episcopal leader Steve Leese is on with us. Coach Leese, how are you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
A lot of people don't consider the TAPPS and SPC kids to be some of the most elite, and I've come to find out that a lot of those players that you guys have on your teams are extremely elite. Can you kind of talk about the level of athleticism that comes to that's at your school and that y'all compete against every single week?
Yeah, so I mean, and I can go back just a tad, and it was, years ago, 2010, we had a quarterback that wanted to go to U of H, and Dana Holgerson was offensive coordinator and loved him. And Kevin Sumlin was the head coach, and he said, we're not taking a private school kid from Texas. And Dana's like, this guy can play. So Dana called his buddy, Ruff McNeil at East Carolina. Shane goes up there and ends up Conference USA Player of the Year and American Conference Player of the Year. I think he had 8 touchdowns on U of H in that first game. So that's kind of where we were in 2010. And then you come forward now. We right now have 3 first-round NFL projected picks next year that were at our school. And I don't know if a high school has ever had that. Walker Little, 24/7 number 1 ranked player in the country. He's at Stanford. Marvin Wilson, he was Rivals number 1 ranked player in the country. He's at Florida State. And then Jalen Waddle, who just incredibly electric freshman player of the year at Alabama 2 years ago. And all 3 next year are projected first-round picks. So we've had a lot of elite talent, in the conference. Next year we're playing Paris Episcopal, who won TAPPS last year. And they have one of the premier quarterbacks in Preston Stone in the country. So, what you're really getting with us is, you walk on our campus and 100% of our kids go to college. And, we got incredible faculty and we play really good football. So it's kind of a win-win. And that's where really things have changed in the last 10 years.
That's awesome. And let's talk a little bit about, the SPC and the teams that you're playing against. Can you kind of talk about the competition in your district and some of those top dogs other than your school?
Yeah, so, really it's been us and Kincaid. 3 years ago, All Saints was in the SPC and they ended up moving to TAPPS. But really it's been us and Kincaid that have been at the top. St. John's, they had a first-year coach last year in Kevin Beltry, and they were really, the year 2 is always a big year for schools. They were 6-3 last year, 4-2 in district play, and really as a second-year coach, they'll be taking it to another level. ESD last year started out, they were 4-0 or 5-0, and Richard Williams does a great job up in Dallas. Troy Aikman's on that staff, so you just don't know how they're going to be coming out. They throw every play. I imagine Troy Aikman has something to do with that. And then, Houston Christian last year, they started out really 5-2 and then just kind of had a tough end of year schedule. So, they were really young that last year, and St. Mark's was the same way. Really last year, week 4 was really big. I kind of look back at it because Kincaid was 0-3 going into the game with St. Mark's, and St. Mark's is 2-0. And Kincaid won that one 34-32. And Kincaid they had lost some good kids from the year before, and they were kind of looking for their identity, and they found it that game. And, after that, Kincaid went on a 6-1 record. So, and St. Mark's went 1-5. So that was a big game that week 4. So I just don't know how that's going to play out this year. What that big game's going to be in conference play. What I do know is, Kincaid's not going to sneak up on anybody, and we're not going to sneak up on anybody. Every time we take the field, we have a target on our helmet. We know that, and we love that.
Thank you so much, Coach Leese, for joining us on the Campfire. We'll be right back after some messages and a little bit of trivia. On this week's trivia question, we have, which Houston area private school has the most state titles? A, Kincaid, B, St. John's, C, Episcopal, D, St. Pius X. We'll have the answer when we return.
Chevrolet Inside High School Sports is brought to you by your Houston area Chevy dealers. Visit your nearest dealer to test drive our award-winning products. The film session is presented by your local Geico offices in Cypress, Katy, Spring, and Pearland. To get more information or a quote, go to geico.com/Houston.
Welcome back to the Campfire. We have the answer to our trivia question. Which Houston area private school has the most state titles? It's A, Kincaid. How many of you actually got that trivia question right? Comment and let us know. Now it's time for the district breakdown. We have Inside High School Sports Insider Matt Harris on with us to talk a little bit of private school football. Matt,
Thanks, Ashley. We'll begin our district breakdown with the private schools, TAPPS and SPC. On the TAPPS side, St. Thomas had a great 2019 season where they made it all the way to the state semifinals before losing to eventual champion Episcopal. Fortunately, St. Thomas will return a good amount of talent in 2020 to hopefully make another run at a state title. As for St. Pius X, they had a great 2018 season behind quarterback Grant Gunnell, who went off to Arizona and broke multiple records while in high school. Unfortunately, they missed his talent in 2019 before they went 2-9, but they do return a good amount of talent to hopefully build on that 2019 season heading into 2020. As for SPC, it's an interesting conference with teams in DFW, Houston, and one in Oklahoma City. Yet, the state championship game has been Houston versus Houston for the last 3 years, with the same two teams, Kincaid and Episcopal. Kincaid got the better of Episcopal in 2017 and 2018 before Episcopal got its revenge last season. The Knights blew out Kincaid in the state title game behind performances from two 100-yard rushers who combined for 5 touchdowns. Each of those players is back for the 2020 season, and the Knights will be the prohibitive favorites to go to their 5th straight state title game in SPC. That's it for our private school preview. Tune in next week for 3A and 4A where we'll talk everything from East Bernard to Belleville. Back to you, Ashley.
Thanks, Matt. As always, great insight. That's all we have for our first show of the Campfire. Come back every Monday for a new episode. And stay up to date with everything going on around the greater Houston area in the high school sports scene by following our social accounts. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And we'll have some great original content coming at you directly from our digital platforms. So stay tuned. Until then, I'm Ashley Bullington, and thank you so much for watching The Campfire.